just looking at the cover of the first canto this afternoon when I was looking at the verse. And although shows you not much brains up here, although I've had this book for years. I mean, we've all had it, practically since we joined. It's the first canto. We all read it, and every single Vishnu on here, which I only saw this morning, has a different name. I don't, there's tiny, tiny, tiny print, but each one is, a different Adoksaja, Narayan, Trivikram, Damodar, Sri Hari. I mean, it's just like, it's just amazing. And this is like somebody who's been around for a while, and this is something I'm learning from the first canto, from the cover. So you see, we never ever stop learning, do we? It's constant. So this is a lovely verse, and for a change, if you don't mind, if you will permit, I'd like to do not only the verse but also the word for word, because each word today in this verse is deep with meaning, and I think if we do the word for word, it will give us more of an idea as we go along and discuss the verse later on. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
So, Sutta uvacha evam chintayato jishno Krishna pada saroruham soradena tikadena santashed vimalamatihi. Sutta uvacha. Sri Sutta Goswami said, Evam, thus, Chintayata, while thinking of the instructions, Jishno, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna Pada, the feet of Krishna, Sororuham, resembling lotuses, Suradena, by deep friendship, Atikadena, in great intimacy, Shanta, pacified, Asit, it so became, Vimala, without any tinge of material contamination. Matihi, mind. Translation. Sutta Goswami said, thus being deeply absorbed in thinking of the instructions of the Lord, which were imparted in the great intimacy of friendship, and in thinking of his lotus feet, Arjuna's mind became pacified and free from all material contamination. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Since the Lord is absolute, deep meditation upon him is as good as yogic trance. The Lord is non-different from his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. Arjuna began to think of the Lord's instructions to him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only those instructions began to eliminate the tinges of material contamination in the mind of Arjuna. The Lord is like the sun. The sun's appearance means immediate dissipation of darkness or ignorance. And the Lord's appearance within the mind of the devotee can at once drive away the miserable material effects. Lord Chaitanya has therefore recommended constant chanting of the name of the Lord for protection from all contamination of the material world. The feeling of separation from the Lord is undoubtedly painful to the devotee. But because it is in connection with the Lord, it has a specific transcendental effect which pacifies the heart. Feelings of separation are also sources of transcendental bliss, and they are never comparable to contaminated material feelings of separation. Om Gyana Tiberandasya Gadangana Shalakaya Chaksharan Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So there are so many moods described here, not only in the verse, but in Srila Prabhupada's purport. Moods in relationship, of course, to the Supreme Lord, to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and our relationship with the Supreme Lord, and how it develops and how Sometimes there is union, sometimes there is separation, or what we call vipralamba, which is, of course, the highest mood that one can experience in relationship to our relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the mood of separation. It might seem strange to say that the deepest loving exchange or the loving reciprocation is one where we can feel it the highest when we're not actually with Krishna, when we're separate from Krishna. And Prabhupada gives the example, and the Acharyas give the example. This is a very deep discussion. I'm certainly not qualified to enter into this kind of discussion of Vipralamba, but Prabhupada gives the example of when the lover is separated from the beloved, then of course there's constant thoughts of the lover and the beloved. There's no other thought, and there's constant thought of when the union or the meeting will take place. And similarly, this mood was exemplified by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, as we know, although he advised us to worship in the mood of Aishvarya, of awe and reverence, certainly that was the case in his pastimes, his later Leelas in Jagannath Puri, where he spent the greater part of his life. But still, his mood was a mood of vipralamba, of worship in separation. And it was enhanced to a great degree in the final chapters of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, when the Lord was so much absorbed in thoughts of Srimati Radharani, he couldn't contain himself. We all know that pastime we described before, how he broke through the hut where he was staying with Swarup Damodar, and he went down to the ocean and fell into the ocean in a swoon. He clawed his way through the wall, and he was actually bleeding. His fingers were bleeding. His face was bleeding. He was trying to just get out because the devotees had locked him in. They were deeply concerned for his safety. So the devotees were trying for his own benefit, not realizing, not understanding the extent to which Mahaprabhu was feeling the separation from Srimati Radharani. But of course, when everyone was asleep, Lord Chaitanya actually went through the wall and eventually ended up in the ocean. The fisherman fished him out of the ocean in his net, and just by touching the glorious body of Mahaprabhu, the fisherman became absorbed in pools of ecstasy, and he started melting. And in Swarup Damodar, he found the Lord, and he knew by seeing the fisherman that the Lord must be around here somewhere, because the fisherman was completely crazy. So this is the mood of Vipralamba, but this is the highest perfection. So Prabhupada is advising us in this purport, and in a lecture Srila Prabhupada gave actually on this very verse, how Arjuna, whilst he was so despondent, first of all, he's lost the battle with these simple cowherd boys, this great big warrior. He'd spent the previous verses, as we have just read over the last few weeks, he'd spent in those verses, he was described how he was lamenting to Yudhishthira how the great warrior with the Gandiva bow, he had lost a simple battle with the cowherdsmen. They're not even warriors, not even kshatriyas. Simple cowherdsmen, and Arjuna, he couldn't do anything, because when Krishna wasn't present, he wasn't empowered with the Shakti. Imagine Krishna was actually the driver for Arjuna on his chariot, and now Krishna is gone, and nothing that Arjuna touches. This is the same person who went to the heavenly planets, conquered the demigods, was given benedictions of weapons from the demigods in all directions, even as far as Lord Shiva. And now he is bereft of all, his Shakti is gone, completely gone. But Prabhupada is saying here, and very important in the first line of the purport, since the Lord is absolute, deep meditation upon him is as good as a yogic trance. The Lord is non-different from his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. We always say, and it's a fact, the Lord is non-different from his name. But here, Srila Prabhupada is elaborating on that. The Lord is non-different from anything connected with the Lord. Absolutely non-different from anything connected with him. And Prabhupada lists them. His name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. Arjuna began to think of the Lord's instruction to him on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Only those instructions began to eliminate the tinges of material contamination in the mind of Arjuna. So it's not that Arjuna was in Maya. Prabhupada uses the word here, tinges. The tinges. So we're in the material world. We're in the material world. It's not that we're unaffected, regardless of how developed in Krishna consciousness we may be. We're still subjected to the laws of physics. We're still subjected to the laws of nature. We have a material body. It's made up of all these material elements. So we're still subject to the and also the mood, the mind is also in separation. Here, Arjuna is not Mahaprabhu. He's an ordinary soul like us, like you and me. Of course, he can't really say, but he's a Jivatma. He's Krishna's eternal friend. So in that sense, he's not that ordinary. But he's not Mahaprabhu. He can't experience this degree of vipralamba to the same extent that Lord Chaitanya is experiencing. This is a completely different relationship entirely. But this is also a relationship that is within our grasp, that is there, that is the birthright of all of us. So here Prabhupada is saying, Arjuna began to think of the Lord's instructions to him on the battlefield. Only those instructions began to eliminate the tinges of material contamination in the mind of Arjuna. This is a big hint. This is a very big hint for us. As soon we're in material consciousness, there's material contamination that is there. It is present in all of us. Very, very difficult to avoid, unless we're completely on the purest platform. But the secret to get out of this is immediately just simply remember Krishna. Remember Krishna's instructions. Remember the instructions of Bhagavad Gita. Remember that we are part and parcel of Krishna. As Prabhupada is saying here, the Lord is non-different from his name, form, quality, pastimes, entourage, and specific actions. Everything that is connected with the Lord, that is something that will help us to remind us of our original constitutional position in relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we take advantage of that. And it's not that it has to be super complicated, or we have to overthink it, or we have to, go into all kinds of academic pursuits in order to develop that relationship. We don't. Again, in another lecture I heard last week, it was, as we know, it was Lord Nrsingadev's appearance day. And Srila Prabhupada was giving a lecture on the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev in one of the cities in America. I happened to listen to it on the day of the appearance of the Lord. And Prabhupada was he's relating the pastime of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he's in South India. And he comes across that famous story. It's worth telling again. We've all heard it. The famous story of the devotees sitting outside the temple, and all his friends are laughing at him because he's attempting to read the Bhagavad Gita, but he's illiterate. And everybody's mockingly saying to him, this is described in Chaitanya Charitamrita, they're mocking him and say, okay, so which chapter are you reading today, Brahman? And which chapter are you on? And what's the latest shloka that you've learned today? And of course, he's just sitting there with the Bhagavad Gita in his hand. not understanding a single word. He can't read or write. But Mahaprabhu approaches him, and he realizes, Prabhupada is describing this, these are not my words. He realizes that this is a different person. He's not coming here to mock me. And Mahaprabhu says to him, so Brahman, what are you doing? What are you reading now? What is this book you have? He said, oh, I'm just trying to understand and fulfill the order of my spiritual master. And what is that? Well, my spiritual master at the time of initiation, he told me that every day I must read a chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, but how is this going? He said, well, unfortunately, I can't read. I can't read or write. So it's very difficult for me to fulfill the order of my Guru, Maharaj. But because he gave me that order, I have to try. And Mahaprabhu said to him, so what is your realization from your endeavor? So, well, every time when I just think that Lord Krishna, he actually engaged in the menial service of driving the chariot for Arjuna. And wherever Arjuna told him, go here, go there, immediately the Lord followed his order. When I think of this, that the Lord actually became the servant, of his disciple, said, I just roll around in pools of ecstasy. It's so wonderful. My hairs just stand on end. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said to him, you have understood the purport of the Bhagavad Gita deeply. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced him. So it's not an academic pursuit. Of course, we study the books. We read Srimad Bhagavatam, as we are reading here every day. We read Bhagavad Gita. We go to classes in the temple whenever the opportunity is there. And Prabhupada printed these books, and they're distributed by the hundreds of millions all over the world. So it's not that we're ignoring the books. It's not that we're advocating that we should now become, illiterate or unintelligent or ignore the teachings of the acharyas. Not at all. But the point is, it's not an academic pursuit. The pursuit and the result of that pursuit is based on the intention. That is the fact. The intention, what is in the heart? What do I want to achieve by my endeavor? What do I want to achieve by my seva? By my small offering to Krishna? If I'm a pujari, if I'm a cook, if I'm a sweeper of the temple, I'm a cleaner, I'm a pot washer, or whatever the case may be. What is my intention? Prabhupada says there's no difference between one service and another. Somebody is out distributing books, selling hundreds of books every day. Somebody is on the altar worshiping the deity, or somebody is cleaning the pot, somebody is washing the floor. Whatever the endeavor is, that's not the point. As Prabhupada says in the purport to Patram Pushpam Palam Tayam, it's not the amount, it's not the huge offering that we give to Krishna, it's the thought. What is the intention? So Prabhupada is advising us, and Prabhupada actually gave a lecture in Los Angeles on this very verse in, I think it was 72 or 73. I looked it up a few days ago. And Prabhupada was saying, when we go to worship the deity, and this is an important point, and it's a very important point. It may seem trivial and it may seem insignificant, but actually there's a reason behind it. And there's a reason behind everything that Prabhupada says. It may be that at the point in time where Prabhupada gives an instruction, the purport or the meaning behind Prabhupada's instruction is not immediately apparent. It comes with time. It comes on meditation. And as Prabhupada says, we have to scrutinizingly study these books. Scrutinizingly study, he says in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, scrutinizingly study. It's not that we just read it once and then that's it, or we chant our rounds once and then that's it. No, as Prabhupada says in the purport, has to be constantly there. Satatam kirtayanto mam, always chanting my glories. So Prabhupada is saying, you cannot think of Krishna only from the top. In other words, just only from Krishna's face. That is not the process. In the second canto, we have to think, Prabhupada is saying, we have to think of Krishna's and meditate when we come before the deity. What do? This is the advice of the acharyas. Not only Prabhupada, all the acharyas are saying this. Meditate on the lotus feet. Just like we do Guru Puja every day. And what is the first line of the Guru Puja song? We translate, the lotus feet of the spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. So this is the thing. We start with the lotus feet. It's not that we ignore the 10th canto. Prabhupada is giving the example here by saying start on the feet. Instead of jumping to the 10th canto, we start on the first canto, go through all the different cantos, and eventually reach the 10th canto. So then we're qualified by step by step by step, the process of sadhana bhakti. We're qualified eventually, by the time we reach the 10th canto, we're qualified to understand and dive in deeply to this ocean of vipralambha. And then our life is perfect. We don't need to jump ahead of ourselves or to, intellectualize everything that we do. Just take it in a step-by-step way and follow the guru, sadhu, and shastra. And then our heart will guide us. This is automatic. If we're sincere, then automatically, if we take shelter of the devotees, our heart will guide us. Prabhupada says the first and second canto are the lotus feet of Krishna. And then we gradually rise. When we were accustomed to think of Krishna, that is called transcendental meditation, not the TM that was there prominent in the 60s and 70s that the Beatles went to see, and Maharishi, Mahesh Yogi, and all these different things, which they soon discovered it was just bogus. There was nothing there. And eventually, after some time in India, George Harrison and the other Beatles, they housed Srila Prabhupada when he first arrived in London, and they gave him a house, they gave him full facility. George Harrison donated the manor, and so on and so forth. But first, they had to encounter the bogus yogi, and then they encountered the pure devotee. So it's a step-by-step process. At any moment, Prabhupada is saying, if you immediately meditate, you'd see the lotus feet of Krishna. That is transcendental meditation, and gradually rise to think of this portion. At last, later, the smiling face. The smiling face is compared with the 10th canto. This is explained in the Shastra. So Arjuna was disturbed in so many ways, but as soon as he began to think of Krishna's lotus feet, Saro Ruha, Krishna Pada Saro Ruha, immediately everything became pacified. Shanti. We all want Shanti. Everybody wants peace. The whole world is clamoring for Shanti. But the problem is, everybody's clamoring, looking for Shanti, but the problem is they're looking for Shanti in the wrong place. They're looking for Shanti by taking shelter in their head, taking shelter in their mind, not following any authority. Just do this and do that and do the other, and eventually, hopefully, by some fluke of nature, we'll get peace. But it doesn't work like that. If we don't even understand who we are, how can we bring peace to the world? Prabhupada gives the example, and I'm sorry to say, whenever I remind my Indian friends about this, it's not very popular. Prabhupada gives the example of Mahatma Gandhi. He fought for peace. His whole motivation was Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. But eventually he was killed by his own countrymen. Why? Prabhupada says because he used the Bhagavad Gita. He said eventually, towards the end of his life, Prabhupada wrote him a letter long before he was shot. And Prabhupada wrote him a letter and warned him, if you don't give up politics and you don't actually take to the precepts enunciated in Bhagavad Gita, you will meet a very violent end. That letter is there. It's in the Prabhupada's archives for anyone to see. So Prabhupada was able to predict that. He said he was just a politician using the Bhagavad Gita for his own purposes. He was a pious man, Prabhupada said, but ultimately he missed the message. He missed the point. And in the 914, is it 914 verse? The most confidential knowledge. Prabhupada says, Satatam kirtayanto mam, yitantas shadrida vrata, namasyantas chamam bhakya, nitya yukta upashyate. Prabhupada says, the Mahatma cannot be manufactured by rubber stamping an ordinary man. His symptoms are described here, always chanting my glories, endeavoring with great determination, bowing down before me. These great souls perpetually worship me with devotion. A Mahatma is always engaged in chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Krishna, the personality of Godhead. He has no other business. He is always engaged in the glorification of the Lord. In other words, he is not an impersonalist. This is so crucial. We are personalists. We believe in Supreme Lord as a person. We are individual. We are persons. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, Arjuna, nor all these kings assembled here before us. Nor in the future shall any of us ever cease to be. So we're all part and parcel of Krishna, but temporarily we are locked in these bodies. So Prabhupada goes on to say, this transcendental consciousness or transcendental meditation, without any delay, even for a moment, you'll feel pacified. Therefore, Krishna advises, man manabhava mad bhakto, mam majaji mam namaskuru. Always engage your mind in thinking of Krishna. Now, that's not easy. I agree. And as I've explained previously and so many times when I give these talks, people are probably becoming bored of hearing it, but it happens to all of us, I'm sure. As soon as I pick up my bead bag, the whole world comes flooding into my head. Before, without my bead bag in my hand, my mind is blank, perfectly prepared to pick up the beads and invoke the names of Krishna and start chanting. As soon as I start chanting, this comes in and that comes in, and family problems here, and this money problem there, and this financial problem, and then I have to bring my mind back and bring it back and bring it back constantly with almost every bead. If I ever get through a whole round of meditating on the holy name, that's a miracle. What to speak of a round if I get through one bead by focusing on the name? That is my day's joy and experience. This is life. This is life. But we always have to drag the mind back. The deity worship, Prabhupada says, means to train the neophyte devotee how to concentrate upon the form of Krishna, especially his lotus feet. This will make our life always pacified. Shanta, shanta, shanta. Peaceful. Another point, which is another word, this is why I wanted to go word for word. Sohardena Gita Gadena. Very deep intimacy. This is a very important point. Every word in these shlokas, and especially in Prabhupada's purports, these are Prabhupada's ecstasies. Prabhupada said on many occasions, I didn't write these purports. That's why I read my own books, because I don't know where these purports came from. Sometimes I just pick up the book, I read the purport, and I see this came straight from Krishna. Krishna has put these words in my head, and all I've done is written them down and repeat Krishna's words. And I used to be on a mundane kind of an example, forgive this. I used to be into classical music before I became a devotee, still am to a certain extent. And in Mozart's biography, the famous Mozart, he said, I didn't write anything that is attributed to me. I just saw the notes floating down from the sky, and I just wrote them down on paper. This is a mundane composition about mundane music. But what to speak of Srila Prabhupada? He's getting all this inspiration directly from Krishna. That's what will make our lives happy. We already have a relationship with Krishna. Prabhupada is explaining to us. It's already there. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Suridam Sarvabhutanam Natvamam Shantamrichati. What is that? 529. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. That's all. Full consciousness of me. So why is it necessary, in spite of all the odds against it, why is it necessary for me to continue picking up my bead bag, in spite of the fact that, every time I do it, I'm just going in the opposite direction? It appears to be. We do not understand the power of the holy name. The name itself is Krishna. The name itself is non-different from Krishna. And we have to take advantage of whatever opportunity we have to engage in Krishna's service, whether it's by Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaran, whatever it takes. Then we are reading so many books, consulting so many philosophers, scientists, searching out peace of mind, but we are forgetting our real friend, Surit. Our real friend is Krishna. Suridam Sarvabhutanam. This is essential. We have to understand Krishna's in our heart. He's sitting in our heart. And all we have to do is turn our consciousness towards him. Just like Prabhupada gives the example, it may be a little mundane. Prabhupada says, just like the finger, this finger, it's part and parcel of the body. But if the finger is cut, or I lose the finger, or it gets cut off with a knife or in an accident or whatever, then it's just a finger. It has no place, no reason, nothing to do with anything. It's just something that's pretty. Somebody sees it on the side of the road. It's just like something disgusting that you just want to avoid even looking at it. But when it's connected with the hand, when it's connected with the body, then it has its purpose. Prabhupada gives the example of, your watch. Your watch is fine, but the little cog that we use for winding the watch, when it's separated from the watch, something you wouldn't even see, you wouldn't even notice on the street, you wouldn't even bother to pick it up because it has no value. It's separated from the watch. But then as soon as it's connected with the watch, then it has this great value. The finger's value is so long as it is attached to the body. Our value is so long that we are attached to the lotus feet of the Lord, to the lotus feet of Guru and Krishna. The lotus feet of the spiritual master are the only way by which you can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. And to do that, how do we order the society? The Brahmins are the head of the society, the intellectuals, the ones with the brain. So how do we order the society? The society is divided into 4 classes, as we know: intelligent class, administrative class, productive class, and worker class. The whole human society is ordered like this. Whether we call it communism, or whether we call it capitalism, or whether we call it socialism, or thisism, or thatism, the whole society all over the world is ordered like this. We always have the intellectuals, we always have the Brahmins. They may not be called Brahmins, but that's what they are. These are the intellectuals. And we have the administrative class of the Kshatriyas. Even in the former Soviet Union, in Russia, where everybody was supposedly in an egalitarian society, there were still leaders. There were still workers. There were still industrialists. There were still farmers. I mean, this is just the nature of society. Society automatically forms into this. But the problem is today, as Mahaprabhu tells us, Kalo Sudra Sambhava. The whole society is Sudra. That's the problem. So there's nobody recognizing the fact that unless we have a God-centered society, then we we're completely losing it. We may make so many advances in technology and so many advances in material science and so many advances philosophically and so on and so forth. But what's the end result? The end result is chaos because we have lost sense of the reason, just like we were talking originally about our motivation for wanting to serve, our motivation for offering the flower, the motivation of the illiterate Brahmin for wanting to try to read Bhagavad Gita. What was his motivation? He was given the instruction by his guru. The motivation for wanting to offer the flowers because we want to patram pushpam talam, something small. Just offer something, give some, be selfless. And if we're selfless in a way that's directed towards Krishna, that is our ultimate benefit. That is where we succeed. So in human society, the central point is Krishna. If we forget Krishna, this intelligent class of men, the administrative class, productive class, worker class, asara, it's all useless. It's completely useless. We don't get anywhere. And at the end of our life, what happens? We all go to hell in a basket. So what is the point? What is the point? So we have to communicate this message in our own way to whoever we meet. That's what Mahaprabhu told us. Whoever you meet, just give them the value of Krishna consciousness, even in a small way. You don't have to go sticking a Bhagavad Gita down somebody's throat, but in a small way, introduce the idea, even the concept. Forget about mentioning Krishna. Just introduce the concept that there's something more than what we can see here. And the logic that is there, that at the end of our life, it's all gone. We come into the world naked, we leave it the same way. We don't take anything with us. It's completely useless. If you, by your intelligence, Prabhupada says in the same verse that we're discussing today, in that lecture, Prabhupada, I'm trying to remember, if you forget the person who you're intimately related to, and he gives the example of the prodigal son, which is the story that's mentioned in the Bible. The son may leave the home and go off and squander his father's wealth and just disappear and then end up in the gutter somewhere on the other side of the world, forgetting what his original home was, his original identity, and then by some twist of fate, eventually he's reunited with his father. Then of course he's welcome back. And in the biblical story about that prodigal son, the father is embracing his son. He has so many sons, but he's concerned for the one who has drifted away, who has gone away, fallen by the wayside, and ended up in this deplorable situation, as we have. But Krishna is, Prabhupada says so many times, Krishna is coming, taking 10 steps, a million steps towards us for every one step we're taking towards him. It's a question of faith. It's a question of faith. We can't allow ourselves to become despondent or despairing of the fact that we may not be seemingly, it may be appear to us, we're not making progress, but we are. We're making progress in leaps and bounds. Every time, even falteringly, we pick up our bead bag and it's just, there's no pools of ecstasy. We're not rolling on the floor in pools of ecstasy when we pick up our bead bag. That doesn't mean it's not working. It's penetrating into the heart. It's eventually going to reach the goal where we are actually completely and totally submerged in Krishna consciousness, falling at the lotus feet of Krishna, and become aware of that. So we don't want to end up. What is the alternative? I mean, let's face it, what is the alternative? The alternative is to end up like the vast majority of the population of the planet. Whether they're the so-called intellectuals, academics, or the leaders, or the big presidents, or the prime ministers or whatever titles they may have. What is everybody after? Eating, sleeping, mating, defending. That's it. I mean, that's it. It may be in a glorified way, in a big fancy hotel on the 180th floor in Dubai or whatever, we want to try to find happiness. But fancy swimming pool by a beach or whatever the case may be, with our martini cocktail, that's, but ultimately it's just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. And we all know from the Bhagavatam, we'll be doing that later in another canto, we know how Indra was cursed to take the birth as a pig. So he took birth as a pig. And he's suffering like anything intensely, eating stool, the king of heaven, who gave these amazing weapons to Arjuna, who benedicted so many personalities. People go to him for benedictions. He ends up in the body of a pig. And then Brahma takes pity on him and goes to him and says, "What are you doing here? Go back. Forget about this curse. I'll completely eliminate it, and I'll relieve you of this curse. Go back to your heavenly kingdom." And what does Indra say? "No, I can't do that. How can I leave Mrs. Pig and my children pigs here? I have to take care of them." Brahma was astonished. He was absolutely astonished. But are we any different? Are we any different? This is our position. We're not in the body of a pig, obviously. But at the same time, are we really in our original constitutional position as Gopi Bharta Kamalayur Das Anudas Anudas? We have some way to go, but we're on the path. We are on the path. We're trying to utilize intelligence to find out the supreme cause, the supreme, with whom we are intimately related, just like Arjuna here in this verse. He's intimately related. It's not only Arjuna that this verse applies to. Arjuna is representing us in the question and answer session that's going backwards and forwards in Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna is asking the questions, and then when Krishna says, "I first imparted this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god," Arjuna doesn't accept that and just take it verbatim. The sun god? How can you talk about the sun god? You and I are the same age. What are you talking about here? Arjuna questions. He doesn't just, absorb it like a sponge. He questions. There's a dialogue. There's a relationship. We're entitled to question. We're entitled to ask. We're entitled to get answers. As Prabhupada says in that beautiful purport in Bhagavad Gita 4:34. Tadvidi pranipratena pariprashtena sevaya upadekjanti tekana skaninas tattvadarshinaha. That's a wonderful purport. It gives the whole Guru Tattva in that one purport. It's just incredible how Prabhupada's words explains the most complex subject matter, cover the most complex issue in the simplest of language that even people from Ireland can understand. It's incredible. So this is the value of Krishna consciousness. We're now separated from Krishna. We've forgotten Krishna. This is our position. Although I may be intelligent, or I may consider myself to be this, that, and the other, if the only thing I'm engaged in doing is eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, where's the benefit? So the big Prabhupada goes on to explain that the big scientists, what have they done to bring their so-called peace to the world? What has their science done? They developed the atomic bomb. To what effect? To kill. This is their idea of developing peace. This is what they call Shanti. Still, they are dying, and they're giving credit. People are already dying naturally. Tens of thousands of people are being born every day. Tens of thousands of people are dying every day all over the world. So dying, we don't need to accelerate. We don't need big scientists to accelerate the dying process. It's already there. People are dying from want of food, dying in famine, pestilence. So what have we discovered? This is called intelligence. This intelligence is described in Bhagavad Gita. advertising themselves as intelligent, but the real intelligence is taken away. Real intelligence is that we are advancing in science and in education centered around Krishna, not inventing the skyscraper building, as Prabhupada says, not inventing the, electric motor cars or diesel motor cars or petrol motor cars. Where is the peace? Where is the shanti? Where is it? Intelligence must be utilized to understand and discover the real shanti. That is intelligence. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adokshade. That's 1, 2, 26. It's worth looking at because we're doing the first canto anyway. So 1, 2, 6. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Unmotivated and uninterrupted. Satatam kirtayanto mam. Yatantascha dridha vrata namasyantas tamam bhakya nitya yukta upashyate. Krishna says always, twice in the same verse. Satatam, nitya, always chanting my glories. Unmotivated, in other words, we don't want any material result. Of course, there's a motivation. We want to take shelter at the lotus feet of Krishna. That is our motivation. Doesn't mean no motivation, but no material motivation. Savai pumsam paro dharmo. Our intelligence must be utilized for searching out the Supreme and our relationship with Him. If you want to discover who is your father, you ask your mother. It's very simple. It's not a complicated thing. Everybody wants promotion, but if we're just engaged in this society of... So we just need to become the servant of the servant of the servant. This is the goal. And it doesn't matter who we meet. And we give that opportunity to everybody. Even when we're going... maybe I'm thinking in the wrong direction, but Prabhupada has given the example, wherever you go, when you chant, everything is benefited. The trees are benefited, the birds, the insects, the grass, because the sound vibration is belonging in the transcendental sphere. It does not belong on this planet. It does not belong on this earth. We relate it in our covered condition to a material sound vibration. It's not. It's completely different. It penetrates to the soul. It goes straight to the spiritual world because it's coming from the spiritual world. Krishna and his name are non-different. This Krishna conscious movement is beneficial for everyone and everything. There was one, I was reading Govinda Dasi's book, as I told you a couple of weeks ago, which just came out. And Govinda Dasi, as I previously explained, she's one of the 2 devotees of all of Srila Prabhupada's disciples who are directly mentioned by name in Srimad Bhagavatam purports. Prabhupada has mentioned Brahmananda and Govinda Dasi because she started the planting of Tulsi Devi in the Western countries, and she cultivated Tulsi Devi. And in 1976, I think it was, Prabhupada was in Vrindavan. He was having a conversation with Achyutananda. And Achyutananda Swami at the time, he said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, are those new japa beads you have? He said, Prabhupada was beaming from ear to ear, big smile. He said, yes, these are made by Govinda Dasi, and this Tulsi was growing in Hawaii, and she made these beads for me, and she sent them to me here in Vrindavan. I'm so happy to receive them. Prabhupada was so happy. But on the morning walk with Govinda Dasi in Hawaii, when Prabhupada first went to Hawaii, I don't know if you've been to Hawaii, but they have beautiful beaches there. It's a bit like Mombasa. But it's Western but beautiful beaches, has mountains, forests. It's a beautiful place, and so many tourists go there. But they have amazing nature in Hawaii. The biggest volcano in the world is there, which erupted just a couple of years ago and created new islands out into the Pacific Ocean. It's constantly expanding. But they have these giant snails. And Prabhupada was there for a morning. And the snails, they come out in the morning when it's a little cool. And there's a bit of dew on the grass. And they crawl around doing their business. Prabhupada hadn't seen these before, so he said to go, what is this? And oh, that's a giant snail, Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, so chant. So she goes with her beads, Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada said, no, get down and chant. So get down on your knees. So she got down on her knees and she chanted around to this snail. Prabhupada said, acha, good. So Prabhupada was so happy because, the sound vibration, everything is affected. On the same Hawaii, it's the first time Srila Prabhupada was so innocent, such a lovely, lovely, beautiful personality. I mean, we can never get enough of Prabhupada and hearing about him. On the same island, in Hawaii, when Prabhupada went out with the other devotees on another occasion, and some people, because it's beautiful Pacific Ocean, lovely waves, so people go surfing. So Prabhupada hadn't seen this. People weren't surfing so much in India when Prabhupada used to live there. It was a novelty for Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, what is going on there? So Govinda Das said, oh, they're surfing, Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada said, they're suffering? And she said, no, she thought that Prabhupada had misheard. So she said, no, Prabhupada, they're surfing. Prabhupada said, yes, they are suffering. They are suffering. We have to save them. So here's this beautiful atmosphere, beautiful place, Hawaii. People are enjoying like anything. The material energy is in its perfection. Beautiful food, beautiful weather, beautiful atmosphere, beautiful fruits. They grow mangoes all over Hawaii. Prabhupada went there for the mangoes. But Prabhupada hit the nail on the head. Yes, they are suffering. And this is a fact. We're all suffering. So how to get out of this cycle of suffering? How do we all want Shanti? We all want, to be free. We all want Vaikuntha, free of anxiety. So this is the way. This is the way. Just follow this process. Follow it. Never give it up. Stick with it. And everything will reach a stage of perfection. It's guaranteed. Declare it boldly, O Arjuna, my devotee never perishes. Never. And just teach this to others. That's all we have to do. In our own way, in our own words, in our own simple way, or in our own intellectual way, whatever capacity we have, and everything falls into place. Thank you very much. I think it may be time now, if there are any questions or comments, I'd be very happy to try and answer. Thank you very much. Haribol.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. I didn't even keep track of time, and it's the time is almost over. But before anybody asks questions or comments, I'd like to welcome Ritu Mataji, all the way from California. She has joined this group, so let us chant 3 Haribols to welcome her to this group. Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. If you can switch on your video, we could have the darshan of your lotus face. Thank you very much, Mataji, for
Jai.
joining. We meet every day at the same time, on the same link. So we'd love to have your association every day. Okay, with that, are there any questions or comments? There are no questions or comments. I'm cognizant of the time. We just have 2 minutes left. I hand over to Path Prabhu. Path Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Are you able to switch on?
Hare Krishna. Yes, Mother. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, please accept
Jai.
our humble of Hare
Jai
Bol, Hare Krishna.
Krishna. Jai Haribol.
Yes. Yeah, it's very nice class, very sweet and sober. So I have also no question, no doubt, Prabhu. I hope
Good.
all the devotees are, yes, they are releasing this nectar. So I request everyone, please unmute yourself and chant Hare Krishna mantra for a glorification of His grace, Vidura Prabhuji. Oh, Mataji, you have a question?
No.
Oh, thank you very much.
Oh, I was doing Hare Krishna.
Too much
Hare Krishna.
ecstasy.
Hare Krishna, Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Rama, Hare
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai.
Banta Kalpataru
Vipa Sindhu, Patitanam,
Sanam
Pavanebhyo,
Namo
Namo
Namo Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai. Hari Hari Bol.
His grace Vidura Prabhu ki jai.
Jai. Hari Hari Bol.
Hare
Jai.
Bol.
Jai Part Prem Prabhu. Hari Bol. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Good night.
Good night.